This is our second episode of our new Whitetail Instinct video podcast. As always, this will be up on SoundCloud, so you can listen to it in just audio form, or you can watch it here on YouTube in a video podcast. But we're going to be talking about the high wall set, why we call it the high wall set, how we found it, how we scouted it, what happened when we hunted it, everything surrounding this stand set here on public land. So we're back inside making another video podcast. We'll probably try to do one like every week, but we're having another one so close to the one we just released because there's like 8 inches of snow on the ground outside right now here in central Nebraska. So we can't be out looking for sheds. We can't be snow goose hunting. We can't be scouting anything new. So we're bringing you guys another video podcast here, and we've got the stove rolling back there. That's not like part of the set. That thing really works.
Yep.
And it's cooking right now. So if like this side of our face looks really red, it's because that thing's really warm.
Yeah, there's a reason Bree's in a short sleeve t-shirt.
Yeah,
because this thing is hot.
It's rolling back there.
So yeah, we're hoping to get more scouting videos. We've been wanting to do more scouting videos of those new properties that me and you are probably going to be hunting this year. So we want to go out and do those scouting videos. The weather just hasn't allowed us to. But that's why we're doing another podcast. So hang with us. We're going to get some more live content here pretty soon if the weather ever allows it.
And thanks for everybody that's sending questions from the last video. We got quite a few questions to make those question videos. We're already starting to work on those. We also got one map in that we're going to do a map scout video of too.
Yeah, so make sure on this episode you have any questions about anything we talk about or anything that you've just thought of that you've had questions on, send it in the comments or on our social media, direct message us, anything. That's how we got that map that we're going to scout and do a podcast on that property that he sent in. So if you have anything like that, send it in. We'd love to look at it and talk about it, make a video of it.
Yep.
And so like we already mentioned before, we're going to talk about the high wall set. It's a spot we really focused on for probably the majority of this year at least. It was a focus for me anyways on wanting to get back there and hunt it because it's such a good spot, and we talk about it a lot and we call it the high wall, and we're back there all the time. But so we kind of wanted to explain what all goes into it because it's a pretty interesting spot. So I guess the first thing to let's talk about how we found it first, and then we'll describe what the high wall is and how it got its name, because we call it that without any real reason for it.
So I guess it starts again with just the hunting public sharing their information with us and helping us out. When I was out there working with them during the off season, we've been doing a bunch of scouting. So I learned a bunch of new stuff about the beast style tactics and how they scout and how they do things and looking for beds. You were back here in Nebraska, so you were going to hunt that property. So you asked me to just to look at the map, use what they had taught me to try to like maybe see it with fresh eyes.
Fresh set of eyes on
and kind of look at different spots. And like that was the place that I was like, with the things they've told me with getting away from access, diversity, a terrain feature, that's where I went, and that's where I told you. I told you that in September and like October. Yeah. It was like, go back here to this spot back in here. Yep. And when you hunted the river because you saw that buck that we call Limpy. Yeah. So you were after a big buck anyway, so that's why we didn't necessarily push back there, but just found that spot back there, and I told you then to keep going back there, but you never went back there. And then we went back in there in November, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. But I guess looking at it on a map, the one thing that I saw was biggest terrain feature is the high wall itself.
Yeah, the fact that we're hunting flat river bottom country. Like it doesn't go from here to here.
Not very often.
Through the whole property, like at all. Like there's no topography change at all, every once in a while. But then all of a sudden you come to this one spot, it's kind of right on the border of the public and private, real close to it anyways, and all of a sudden you get this, I don't know what it is, 15, 20 foot, just wall where probably the river used to run back in the 1600s
it's kind of eroded away.
Yeah, you can tell the river used to run through there, and it's, like I said, 15, 20 feet tall, and it's pretty much vertical. You could walk up it, but it's not
it's real easy.
Real close to being vertical. It's got a slight slant to it. So it just creates a topography that's not anywhere else that helps us predict deer movement a little bit better.
So that was the thing, was that terrain feature. It was like biggest thing is if we knew somewhat deer movement wise based off that terrain feature. We knew hunters weren't coming from that way. And then there was a couple of draws that fed up out of there into the private off onto some crop fields. So we knew deer movement wise again that they'd be funneling probably up those draws because the high wall is so steep.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we call it the high wall. So we talk about the high wall. It's just a general location, but it's called the high wall because of this
very high wall.
Very high wall of dirt, essentially, is what it is. I wouldn't call it a bluff because it's not like straight. It's not like a cliff. It's just like a hill, but it's pretty much straight up, but not quite. But you can walk up it, and the deer walk up it and jump off it. You had that happen, that doe come running off of it. But that's pretty much why we call it the high wall. And when we're going back there, we're going to the general area of the high wall. That's essentially what we call it. So it's just a simple name that just stuck, apparently. First of all, let's talk about what were the factors that led us to, looking at the map, get back there.
Okay, biggest one was we had some terrain features, which in here, where it's farm country, flat ground, that was something we were keying in on to give, those bucks and just deer in general for bedding there some type of feature that, like, because in Iowa they have all the hills, so we were kind of looking for that, some type of terrain feature when it's just flat farm ground. And then it was so far away from access, we didn't think any other hunters were going to make it back there. So we had a terrain feature that we liked. We had some diversity. We had horsetail grass. We had the dry river that runs right there, and then just regular hardwoods. And then the private land had some different CRP. So we had diversity and habitat type. And then, like I said, we just didn't think any hunters were going back there. That was the biggest thing. It was just the farthest point from access, and we didn't think nobody was going back.
It's about as far back as you can get, and all those things you mentioned help create somewhat predictable deer movement. All you have to do is figure out how they're using it. So that terrain feature is going to create movement in some way. It's just a matter of figuring it out. The dry river that's back there is going to create movement in some way. You just have to figure it out. The horsetail grass is going to create movement or bedding in some way. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And then when you put them all together, then that's how it creates the movement. It's just a matter of putting all those factors together.
And we didn't know any of that when we went in.
No.
We knew there was a terrain feature. We knew there was horsetail grass. We knew there was the dry river. But we didn't know how that worked in correlation with how the deer were going to move.
Yep.
That's what we were going to figure out.
Yeah.
So it's not like we had this whole thing figured out.
Yeah,
we knew an area.
Yeah.
We knew it had things we liked. But as far as how the deer were going to use some of those stuff, we didn't know.
We had no clue. We just knew they were going to use it. It's just a matter of figuring it out.
Yeah. And that's how, I guess, the process started of us figuring it out. Is I told you to go back there. And I kept telling you to go back there, and when the river kind of died off a little bit, hunting pressure moved in there. You guys moved back there. You and Dad went in, hunted there a couple times. I think you saw a few deer. And then I came in with you a little bit before Thanksgiving, hung right on the edge of that dry river. So we were going to kind of start from that second dry river there and work our way back in there and just see what deer movement was like. So we got to a spot that we thought we probably could have pushed further to start with, but we were playing playing it safe. And we were just going to incrementally hang and hunt our way back in there, I guess, was our strategy for figuring out the movement.
Yeah. And so once we sat that morning, I believe we saw that one buck crossing the river. I believe it was that morning.
Yep, coming out of where we have the high wall now.
Yeah, coming out of the high wall set and where we set up now. He came like literally straight out of there, about where we go up and in now. And then I think that was maybe some does. I think we seen does, if I remember correctly. Those does were back there, and then we had that buck come out.
But we heard a bunch of running around
in that horsetail
behind us.
In that horsetail grass, we could hear stuff, but it's so thick, we couldn't see anything. But like, there's something back there. We keep hearing stuff, but we can't see anything. And I don't know, I think it was you that said, before we leave, I want to get down and just walk up over this hill. Because you've been working with the hunting public.
Yeah, my curiosity kind of got the best of me, but I was like, we have to sneak up here and see what it looks like.
Like, let's just go 40 yards and see what it looks like and see what happens.
We didn't just walk. We still hunted.
Yes, good point. We were going slow and quiet.
I wasn't just like, oh, let's just climb down and bushwhack our way through here.
Yeah.
We still hunted the 50 yards up to the point I wanted to get to.
Yep.
And it was a good thing that we did.
So essentially, we've set up on the edge of the high wall horsetail grass location bedding area. It's a big, long bedding area. We've set up on the edge of it. Essentially, that morning, all we did was go straight at a right angle, straight
deeper into it.
Like 50, 60 yards, real slow, still hunting. So it was a risk, but at that point in the season, you're like, we have to try to make something happen. We have to find the bucks, get back on them, all that stuff. So it was a measured, calculated risk. I wouldn't say every single time. Now, we do it every once in a while because the curiosity gets you and you're like, let's just go slow, still hunt. We did it this year, see what we can see, and then we'll back out. But it was a calculated risk that we thought we had to do, and the benefits outweighed the not doing it. And so when we did that, we climbed down. I don't even know like what time it was, late morning. Climbed down and still hunted our way through. We hit that horsetail grass, and then we hit again a terrain feature
within the horsetail grass.
And this is let you know how flat the area that we're hunting is that when a terrain feature is this big of a hill that just goes up, that's a terrain feature and a major terrain feature. That's how flat the stuff is that we're hunting. So I think if I remember correctly, we were walking, we got to that slight terrain feature, we popped up on top of it.
Because that's where we wanted to get to.
Yes, we seen that terrain feature on the topo map.
Yep.
So like, let's get to that slight rise, see what we see. If we don't see anything, we'll leave. And we got to there.
Down, I think, and we were just like,
I was talking to you. I think I was talking to you just like I'm talking to you right now. And I look up and I go, he's coming right at us. There was a buck just on the other side of this terrain feature coming straight down it, walking north to south, just walking straight down it.
How you'd expect a buck to walk down the edge of a transition.
Parallel that transition line, walking straight down it. It's, it's not peak rut by any means, but they were still rutting, obviously, by what happened later. So he's just walking straight down that thing. I'm like, Brody, he's coming right at us. We almost got a shot at him. I mean, he was close, pretty close to getting a shot at him.
That was a nice 4x4, I think.
Yeah. Another buck came, I think, from the other way, came in to meet that big buck we seen first, and we were pinned down by deer.
And that was all the running around we had heard all morning long, was those does and spikes and that big buck running around in there.
Yeah, there was a hot doe in there, and they were running around back there everywhere. And so we were pinned down in that spot, had the bow ready because we were about ready to shoot a whole bunch of them, and we were, like, literally pinned down, like, couldn't move. At one point, Brody goes, we need to get out of here right
just
now.
So we can refigure out.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted to get... We had seen enough at that point that we were like, let's just not screw this up.
Get out of here unseen.
Yeah, and then we'll come back.
And back out. And that's essentially what we did. We waited long enough. They worked their way off. We crawled out real slow and quiet, took those stands down, and then moved in later and had some good hunts back there. Later on in the year, seen some bucks and spikes and stuff running around back there. But that's how we got back there. So it was a little bit of luck because we happened to hit it at the right time, and luck that we didn't get spotted when we were in there. But then it was a calculated risk to, we need to move back and see what's in here. We're not going to go back there then walking like how we're going to go scout now, where you're just trudging along talking. Like, you're still hunting. It's still hunting season, still go slow. Because you don't know what, all it took was for that one buck to walk maybe 10 yards closer, and we could have shot him. So it still goes slow and quiet.
Yeah. So even on your adjustments and your moves, do it like you're hunting, obviously. Yeah,
because it's just going to allow you to see that. Had we walked in there, we just spooked out one spike, not knowing there was two big ones and 3 more spikes back there. So, and then after that, I think we hunted it a few times, and then I think we gave it a break maybe for just a little bit, but not too long.
Yeah. And at this point, we're not at what we call the high wall right now. We are, what would you say, 100 yards?
Yeah.
100 yards away from it. So we're not back to the high wall yet. We're still working our way back in there.
Yeah. And so I came back, it was probably...
It's getting close to December.
Yeah, it was already in, because we only had 2 weeks left, I think, in the season. So it was probably middle part of December, and it's getting dark early enough that time of the year. I'm like, just as well wait and go back in. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go all the way back in to the high wall, the big, and I'm calling it a bluff, but the big hill high wall that we're calling a high wall.
The spot we're sitting now that you guys have seen in the videos that we call the high wall. So you've moved. You're not going back to the spot where we got pinned down with those bucks. You're moving basically as deep as you can in there.
At this point, 2 weeks to the end of the season, I'm like, it's all the way back
time to
in there.
Figure something out and bust them out.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to, I'm going to spook something if I go back there, but I'm like, I need to go back there. Some point this year, we need to go back there, see what's back there. If I spook something, I spook something.
And on the ground, too. You didn't bring a stand, you're just going to go
I was going to go, I had my bow with me, I was going to sit up on the high wall by a tree, and then if anything walked along the edge, I could shoot it. If not, I could see forever. So I could at least see what was down there. I'm like, well, it's going to be a risk. Again, another risk, but there's some reward to it if it works, and do it the appropriate way.
And with the wind, you're going to go in there with a wind.
That was,
If you're sitting in front of the high wall, so the high wall is to your back, you're looking out this way. Like I said, high wall to your back. You're having a wind that's coming from everything in front of you, hitting the high wall.
Yep.
So like nothing's going
That's
to
another
smell
reason
you
I decided to go there.
unless it was back up on the high wall. So I mean, your wind was perfect.
Yeah, that's another reason I decided to go there, is because I had the right wind to do it. So I went in early, super early, set up on that high wall, and I don't know how many mature bucks I seen that night, four or five and
bucks.
does everywhere. There was one bedded down right there in front of me. The one you and Dad about shot before he shot his buck this year. The one with the messed up back leg, just about shot him that night, actually. He was there.
Which
there
he
was
exploded going into this year, antler-wise.
He's way bigger.
He's like, whoa, but... Anyway.
Yeah, he was back there. He was with another nice buck, and there was like 2, 3, 4 more bucks back there, and I'm like, holy crap, this was a spot we needed to be in. So that's when we really started to focus on during the off season, because we went back there and hunted quite a few times, but I think we've seen more bucks back there at least a couple times when we went back that year.
Yeah, because then we decided we were going to move from that sitting on the high wall and push it a little bit farther.
Oh, yeah.
So instead up on the ground, trying to get one where they were walking, and we did that and had like a buck come out 10 yards from like in the direction that neither of us could see, and all of a sudden Chance looks up and we're sitting on the ground, and this buck is like walking and looking right at us, and we kind of bumped him just a little bit out in front, and then he just walked away. Then we decided, let's not screw it up, and moved back to the high wall just a little bit, and I think we had another buck come running down chasing some does, and then scoot up the high wall.
So we've seen way more bucks back there. So like
in mid to late December, when people are usually looking to go to sit on field edges, we're sitting in the middle of bedding and seeing just 2 bucks a night.
And so that's what made us, going into the off season, say we need to focus on hunting this high wall set or this high wall area, because there's stuff going on back here that we had no idea was going on back here. So that's kind of what led us into wanting to hunt it this year. I think I went in first.
Probably.
And that really, really tall buck before camera light walked right by me. Like, as soon as I got set up, he walked right by me. So we're like, good. Not only is it good in December, it's good in September. And that's something else. Let's go talk about that.
We had a trail cam.
We hung a trail cam there 2 years in a row over the summer and got, if I could count the pictures on 10 fingers of does and bucks.
It's a doe.
Because we didn't get any bucks.
It was one doe and a fawn.
Yeah, one doe and a
10
fawn
times.
this year. And last year, it probably
like 5
got
does.
2 does or something.
Yeah.
Like no bucks during the summer at all. So it's a weird spot.
But I mean, it goes to show you that trail cameras aren't the end all be all for us, and it shouldn't, I don't think, should be for you, because I mean, if you would have based that spot off trail cameras that you put out in the summer, you never would have hunted there.
Yeah.
When really that thing's packed full of bucks.
Yeah, so it's just those trail cameras they're good, but maybe everything was walking behind the tree. Like, that's simply, for any trail camera, it can be that they're walking behind the exact tree you put it on every single day, but you never see them because they never walk in front.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you think it's a good spot, just sit there.
Trust the sign in your instinct in what you've seen there. Yeah. Sometimes more than those pictures on that trail camera.
Because we would have lost out on Dad's buck this year and a bunch of other big buck encounters had we just relied on that trail camera. So that's just a quick thing, another weird thing about this spot. And so let's talk about how it sets up maybe a little bit more before we talk about how we get in, how we've hunted it. Because now we hunted it this year, and if you watch the videos this year, you've seen all the different bucks. I talked about that one right away in September. We ended up seeing him again. Dad obviously shot his. A little bit of ways away, you've seen a couple
4x4, a nice
2 big
5x5,
bucks.
I think.
Yeah, so we've seen a bunch of big bucks down there. Like I mentioned, Dad got his buck, so it's still a good spot that we like to hunt. And honestly, we're still trying to figure it out because it's kind of it's an interesting spot. So let's talk about how it maybe sets up a little bit more terrain-wise before we talk about how we hunt it and why we think the deer are doing what they're doing.
So I guess you've got the bedding area runs north and south, and it's probably, how wide is it? 200, 300 yards wide, and runs a good ways north and south. But we're hunting
half mile.
Yeah, we're hunting the southern side of it, with the high wall being the border on the southern side, and then on the right side of the bedding area, there's that horsetail grass that you've seen us hunting in a lot, and it's just kind of a swampy area, a bunch of cedars, horsetail grass through that, and then that horsetail grass kind of ends, and then it opens up into hardwoods.
And then on the other side of that, I think it's a big CRP field that's private land. I haven't ever been out there to look. And there's a little bit of alfalfa. I think in the far corner.
With an ag field, private land behind us. Somewhat behind us.
And then, essentially, what we think they're doing, which we're still not sure because we're trying to learn it, because it's kind of a crazy spot sometimes, is that they're coming. Sometimes they come from the south. They'll follow that high wall around from the private and come in that way. Other times, we think they're bedded off to our north in the horsetail grass. And then they come over and across and are going out to the ag fields, private land stuff, off to our left and to the west.
Sometimes they're coming from our, what would it be, east too.
Yeah.
So we think sometimes they're coming from our east and then just coming straight across into the high wall area.
But yeah, essentially they're bedding just off to our north, mainly. When most of the bucks are bedding just off to our north, 60 yards maybe, 70 yards, because there's a bunch of down trees and good bedding habitat and the horsetail grass.
But so no terrain feature that they're bedding on. There's really, they can bed on the transition of horsetail to hardwoods, or they're just bedding in all those down trees. So as far as buck bedding goes, there's no hill or something where they're on the upper third. They're just bedding in a clump of dead trees, or they're bedding on the transition of horsetail to hardwoods.
Yeah, and this is more of a, I guess, safety, if that makes sense, bedding area, because no one's coming back here. That's why they're here. It's not really a terrain feature as much as it is a safety, no hunter pressure factor.
So where the buck that we talked about in the last episode and that I shot in October was bedding for watching hunter access and being close to watch that hunter access, this buck is bedding clear back in there just to get away from the hunter access.
Yeah, because no one goes back there, and then it happens to be good bedding habitat in general anyways because of the down trees, the horsetail grass, all that stuff. Anyway, so that's why they're bedded there anyways. So I guess we'll simplify it and say, picture yourself facing north. The high wall is behind us. We're looking out over horsetail grass off to our east, the transition line, and then down trees, CRP type grass in front of us, and the bucks are bedded 70, 80 yards in front of you, and then there's private land further to your left. So that's how it sets up, I guess, in a simplified way. And we come in from the east. So we're not interfering with the bucks that are bedded to the north. And that's one thing, you're like, man, 80 yards away and you're getting in there and not spooking bucks. You want to talk about how we walk in and how important it is that our hunt starts before we even get in there.
Yeah, so, and you guys have probably heard Aaron Warbritton talk about his walking in. The last 100 yards is the most important. We kind of extend that to when we're walking in here to like 200 yards, but those last 100 to 200 yards are the most important. So when we're walking through from where we park to get back there, how far is it? Half mile, 3/4 of a mile?
It's probably 3/4 of a mile at least.
3/4 of a mile is the distance from our truck to that stand. So for that first half mile and a little bit more, we're walking through the woods. Obviously, we're paying attention just in case you see a buck or bump a buck, trying to walk quietly, but we're walking through the woods. We don't essentially care about that area that we're walking through. We're walking through to get back to the high wall set. So once we hit the edge of that second dry river and we're moving up into this bedding area, that's when we slow down and we go really slow.
And that's probably 150, 200 yards from our tree stand.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea. And everything's different. But for this set, 150, 200 yards, because wherever the deer you think are bedded, if you think they can hear you or see you, that's where you need to start slowing down.
Yeah, if you think you're getting close to where they're at, that's when you slow down. And like it'd probably take us 30 minutes if you just wanted to walk back there and get set up.
Yeah.
It takes you about maybe 30 minutes to get back there. But when we're walking, we'll take 45 minutes to get to the edge of the dry river, and then for the last 100 yards, take another 45 minutes.
And we're doing that all the way in. Like, until you hit the bottom step, you're going that
for
slow.
that last important 200 yards. Not for the whole way in, we're not walking that slow. But just for that last important 100 yards.
Yeah. Until we get all the way in to, like I said, the bottom of that tree stand, and then you're still going slow and quiet, but you're all the way to it. You're not to your tree stand or sitting until you're to your tree stand and sitting. So once you get close, it's even more important.
Yeah.
And that's one of these things where we're that close to bucks, and we know there's been does Like, we sit there, and all of a sudden a doe comes walking, you're like, she had to be on the other side of that tree. But because you go slow and quiet, you can get in. And that's a spot where it's like, and I know I thought before, the first time I went in there, I'm like, I'm going to spook stuff because I'm going to go so loud. But it's like, if you go slow, you're not going to. You're going to be perfectly fine. You can get to spots that you don't think you can if you're willing to get up an hour and a half earlier or leave an hour and a half earlier. Because when we go in the morning, we're still going an hour and a half earlier, plus drive time, plus 15 minutes to sit in the dark. Like, so it's going to take, sometimes you have to get up that much earlier to go into some of these spots. You just have to do it. We've hunted in the morning and gone that slow.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
I'd be interested to see how close some of those deer were bedded. Like, if you could, like, see, like, a red dot of, like, where they were when you walked in and how close you actually were. Because that big buck that you had walk underneath your stand in the dark, that we saw right at last light, that big, I think it was like a 5x5, real tall, huge. We had hunted in that pinned down spot that we talked about earlier in the podcast, which is probably 60 yards straight north of the high wall set.
Right,
so we had hunted there, came in the morning, did a hang and hunt in there. So hung the stands in the morning and came in early, hunted there, didn't see anything.
A single thing.
So we backed out for a little bit, got something to eat, snuck back in, picked up our stands, still hunted to the north to see if we could find some fresh sign, backed out, walked down the dry river, and then came into the high wall set for that evening sit, climbed up in the tree stand there, and then that buck got up at last light. And he had to have been, both times, when we came in the morning, when we left mid-morning, came back in early afternoon, and when we came in to hunt the evening, he had to have been within 60 yards of us every single time. Bedded there all day long, didn't bump him once. If you're quiet enough, like, crazy stuff like that will happen where you can be 60 yards from a buck 4 times and never bump it.
Because you're going slow and quiet.
Like, they'll let you get away with stuff.
Yeah, if you do it in the wind. I don't know which way the wind was. I can't remember now. But our wind must have been probably from the west, is my guess. So we never, the way we went, he never smelled us.
You can get away with walking in there if you just take your time.
It's slow.
Like, almost painfully slow.
Yeah.
Like, man, I wish, because you know how many times I get to that edge and I'm just like, man, I wish I could just walk right back in there and climb up.
And so we've kind of talked about, but maybe we can add to it, the fact that it's unpressured is probably the main reason there's bucks back there. Like, I've never seen anyone else ever
I've never seen a
back there.
Boot print back there from anybody other than us.
Yeah. So we're the only ones that go back there. One, it's hard to get to. Like, you have to walk.
And that dry river's not necessarily dry.
No.
It's full of, 3-4 feet of water.
Yeah.
So people aren't crossing it.
Chest high like it was the other time.
And importantly, that's keeping rifle hunters out, which I know a lot of people have to obviously deal with, not just the bow hunters that may not be in your area, but rifle hunters that come in during your rifle seasons and gun seasons to go in there. The rifle people aren't even going back there.
But yeah, so most people think it's too loud and it's too far to get back there, and I don't want to cross the water.
Which is, those are the things that we're thinking about when we're looking at the map.
When we're looking at any map.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the high wall good. No one's going back there, and you can bet those bucks know it. It's evident by the fact of the bucks we've seen back there throughout the year consistently. And the does are back there too, and they're just, every time, they're pretty much carefree. Like, you can just tell body language, this is a bedding area. And multiple times we've had does, one doe bedded looking right at us 15 yards away.
Underneath
we've
our
had
tree.
Bucks bed down, we've had does bed down, like it's a bedding area. You just know when deer are bedded down, you're in a bedding area.
When you watch them bed down from your tree stand, you know you're in the right spot when they're comfortable enough that you can see them come in and then lay down in their beds and bed down for the day.
So just unpressured, that's like we mentioned, the main thing that we look for.
That was the main
any
thing,
spot.
Looking at it on a map.
Yeah.
What was the place that we thought no one else was going.
And then there's no tree stands there, no boot tracks. We've never seen anybody back there, so that just confirms nobody's going back there, at least not at this point. And if they do eventually, the bucks will shift and we'll shift. So it'll be all right. They're down there somewhere. They're going to move. We'll move with them. And so, anything else interesting about the high wall spot you can think of we need to touch on?
Do you want to touch on Dad's hunt back in there?
Yeah, you can.
That was more just rut movement back there, being later.
That's
in November.
Good thing to talk about is that the rut in that spot seems to be later for some reason. I don't know if it's a mature buck thing or if it's that spot sort of a thing, but we've noticed it's Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to see deer, go back there in Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is. I don't know.
That's when we found that pinned down spot.
In
the
the
first
first
spot
place.
we talked about was right around Thanksgiving, and they were rutting like crazy back there. And then Dad's hunt this year, we went back in there the day after Thanksgiving, and we were able to see that really big buck that we almost got a shot on, and then that smaller buck that Dad shot for his first bow buck came in.
So I don't know if it's just that spot or if it's a mature. And you said you've noticed that before, and I think Warb has said that too. Mature bucks are later in November, and that's what we've seen. It's a mature buck spot, so that's when the
They're
bucks
rutting
are
more.
rutting is later in November.
And I think some of it is the hunting pressure from everywhere else pushes more does back in there.
Yeah.
So then there's obviously more hot does back in there running around. But that's one thing, and we mentioned it when I scouted with Zach in that video and talked about the high wall a little bit. But that terrain feature of that high wall is something that big buck that we saw when I was hunting with Dad, he was walking that high wall edge down, cutting all those doe trails. So I mean that high wall acts as a terrain feature that's going to funnel them during the rut. So we can parallel that high wall, hit all those doe trails that are going up to food. They can run the high wall this way. There's a transition this way, but they have a north wind. So they can parallel all those doe trails running that high wall and a north wind blowing anything out of that bedding area. So they're hitting every single doe trail, seeing if anything went up the high wall, at the same time getting all the wind from the whole entire bedding area. So they can check that whole north side just by hitting that high wall and cutting doe trails and letting that north wind blow to them.
Yep. So again, we talk about a lot, and it's really the main thing we've begun to focus on, transitions. Like, that's the whole factor behind why the bucks are walking where they're walking in this spot and why this spot is so good in the first place. It's just transitions.
We
Like,
mentioned
you find the transitions. That's where you need to go.
We mentioned that in prior videos. We did one a couple blogs ago about transitions, and that's where me and Dad set up when he passed on that 4x4 that he shouldn't have. But I was partly to blame for that. And when we saw that bigger buck, he was walking that transition line. Like the place to hang and hunt and sit there was right on that transition. Because that buck's either going to walk there, checking for does or something like that if it's during the rut, or he's going to bed along it.
Yeah, so that's just in a big picture sort of way. If you're going in somewhere and you've never scouted it
down,
you've never been on there at all, and you're going in and you're walking and you're like, I have no idea where to go. My first thing would be just walk. How far can you get from your truck? And then once you get to that point, look for a transition and set up, and you're probably going to see something.
If you're looking at a map, pinpoint the transitions, mark them down and show them, and then look at how you can get in there. Like if you have to pick, if I can only look for one thing on a map when I'm scouting a new piece of property on a map scout, I'm looking for transitions.
And the transitions come in many different types of transitions.
Transitions here in Nebraska are different than Alabama, but there's still transitions.
And there's transitions like within transitions. So it's not only trees to grass, it's cedar trees to regular trees. It's grass to horsetail grass. It's big hill to little hill. It's little hill, 2-foot hill in the middle of flat.
Fence line.
It's a fence line. There's brush in the middle of CRP. Like it's anything that is different from anything else, whether it be terrain or habitat. So just realize they're not always really big, obvious. It's like river edge, riverbank to hackberry trees. Transition. They're gonna walk it.
Just river to woods.
Yeah. So they come in a bunch of different ways. That's a whole nother video topic, but just in general to throw it in there. And that's kind of why we're back there and why it's such a good spot.
Yeah, and just kind of how that terrain and that feature, or those features set up, is transitions and a little bit of terrain.
Yeah. So you want to talk about, now that we've kind of got maybe why we've been back there, why we've hunted it, why we think it's so good, what our plans are for this area moving forward? Maybe what did we learn from it this year, maybe?
Yeah, I think it kind of cooled down a little bit as we got towards December. I don't know if that's food source wise or some different things. We want to make sure that we don't overhunt it and push ourselves out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because we hunted it quite a bit this year. We hunted it appropriately and on the right winds, but we're probably in there more than we should have been. But we kept seeing, there's still deer back there for the majority of the year. So. And
there's areas up and down that we can hunt. And we'll probably start to work our way back there. We'll start on the outside edge of it and just hang and hunt our way back in it again. Like we've hunted there 2 years now, but we're still going to start on the edge, push our way back in there. Because we know if we hunt on the northern side, because I had a trail cam up on the north of there a good ways.
Yep.
So we might go in there, and those were only in there early season, and then the hunting pressure kicked in, and they moved out of there. But we know where they like to bed, so we know if we push them out of this area, we know we're just pushing them farther into where we know they are.
Yeah.
So that's still, again, why we're going to hang and hunt, push our way back in there.
So what are our plans for next year? Do anything different, sitting anywhere different within there? Or time of year? I know we're definitely going to go back Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That seems to be the best spot.
I think we found the spot we need to set up is right where those high wall meets that horsetail north-south
those
transition.
scrapes
So
where
where
Dad
the
shot his.
east-west transition meets the north-south transition. So just south of where Dad shot his, right on the edge of the high wall, we can shoot the scrapes, see down that transition, and see back down the high wall spot.
But yeah, so it's always...
Still adjustments. We're 2-3 years into the high wall, and they're still making adjustments.
Think of it as you're looking at the map, you're pinpointing a specific spot, and then you're putting a stand in a general spot, and then you're removing. So it's like little, and then once you get in, it's
Small.
bigger,
Yeah,
and then it's littler again. So it's just, you're always probably going to have to move. And we've learned, don't wait to move. We used to wait. We got to see it 2-3 times before we move. If you see a buck walk there 2-3 times, now you see him walk there once, move. Like, don't waste the time.
Especially, like, back there in the high wall, we saw those fresh scrapes, and that's why we moved to where Dad shot his buck. You know, just if you see that sign, move your stand 50 yards, because it might be the difference, especially when you're hunting with a bow. 50 yards is huge.
Yeah. So it's just those little movements throughout the year.
And we'll still hang and hunt back in there.
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of takes you through the high wall set. Hopefully we explained it a little bit better. It's still kind of hard to show you
We'll
everything.
have maps and stuff overlaid over this.
Yeah.
So that'll make it easier for the people that are watching it on the video podcast-wise to kind of understand what it looks like. And then you can always go back and watch some of those blogs. That'll give you a good idea of kind of what we're talking about and what it looks like.
Yeah, but hopefully that explained things a little bit better for you. I know it's a spot we talk about a lot. We've had people ask, so what is the high wall exactly? They want to know what it is.
Like the terrain feature and what.
So hopefully that explains it, kind of why we were back there, how we got back there, all that good stuff. Like we mentioned before, if you like the style of podcast and if you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comments or on our social media, anywhere. We want to have your guys' questions so that we can get them answered for you. And we're going to do a whole bunch of videos on them, so keep sending us your questions. Map scouting, if you have maps, you want us to just try to find a spot for you. If you don't care if we show the map or anything like that, we'll try to break it down for you and so that everybody else can learn as well. Yep. So that'll wrap it up for this podcast number 2. Hopefully you guys like them. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll have some more of these and hopefully some scouting if the snow ever melts.